So when we're stressed or our body is responding with that stress response, we produce cortisol from the adrenal glands. So your adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. They're the ones that are responsible for producing that cortisol. Now, this would be okay if it was for a very short amount of time, but because our systems are programmed and we have so many stressors in our environment, this cortisol is on for long periods of time. So what is the competing factor for cortisol? Is growth hormone. So when cortisol is high for too long, you'll get low growth hormone. Now remember I said stress, cortisol is very destructive to the system. So you can see this is already increasing aging because growth hormone is your longevity. It builds muscle mass, keeps the skin firm. So automatically cortisol being the dominant, reducing that growth hormone, that's already increasing premature aging. So after a while, the adrenal glands, when they're constantly having to pump out this cortisol, they get really tired. So a lot of our clientele have got these really weak adrenal glands that are very tired because they've been working so hard for so long. So then when they can't produce that cortisol, the human being is an amazing machine at being able to survive. So we're actually programmed to try to survive no matter what. So what happens when the adrenals get tired and they can't produce that cortisol, your body thinks it needs that to survive. So what it does, it takes your progesterone, I'll do these in different colours, and it turns that progesterone into cortisol. So now your progesterone is being stolen to make that cortisol because it thinks you need that to survive. So now estrogen becomes the dominant hormone. Estrogen and androgen dominant with low progesterone. Then when we have that dominance of that estrogen for long enough, that will affect, estrogen blocks your thyroid hormone conversion. So always know when you're doing your consultation, thyroid is a secondary problem. It's never a primary problem. Thyroid always is underneath stress and gut. So you've got to treat both of those in order to be able to restore thyroid function. So estrogen blocks the conversion of thyroid hormones. And we have, it can go two ways. So normally it's underactive thyroid. In some people it'll actually go hypo before it burns out, but eventually they always get that underactive thyroid. So that is the hormonal imbalance that most of our clients are experiencing. There's another little bit that happens as well. So when we have that cortisol is high, cortisol will lead to insulin resistance. So because of the high cortisol, we get insulin resistance. This is where the problems really start to begin, especially with skin. So remember we said cortisol, when we're in that stress response, the body wants to find the easiest, most usable form of energy, the fastest conversion into energy so we can, run faster and survive. So that's sugar. So cortisol pumps a lot of sugar into the bloodstream. Then insulin's job, normally, it's like the key that opens the cell and allows that sugar into the cell to be used as energy. The other thing that insulin does when it's working, it also allows your branched-chained amino acids into the cell. So we know that amino acids are like the building blocks. So when you have too much sugar in the bloodstream, cortisol stops opening the cell and allowing things in, and they just keep circulating in the system. No one tells the pancreas that insulin isn't doing his job, so in response to that excess of sugars circulating in the system, the pancreas pumps more insulin in. So people with insulin resistance have lots of insulin that's not doing its job. So what is insulin when we have too much of it? It's your fat storage hormone. So they're now programmed to store everything as fat. So if you've got clients that are finding it hard to lose weight, and they could literally reduce their calories down to nothing, if their system's in this cycle, that body is never, ever, ever giving that weight away. It's quite unnatural for the body to lose weight, because especially when you're in this stress response, what the body decides to do, it says, I'll store everything here because these are the main vital organs, because I think we're going to go into this phase where you need that to survive. So when your body's reprogrammed, now it holds everything. It's not giving anything away. So until you change some of these, they will never ever be able to lose weight when they're in that insulin resistant state. So just know this system is now just fat storage. So cortisol body types, they have that mid-section weight gain. Cortisol breaks down protein. So this is another very important thing to write down. Cortisol breaks down protein. So it's going to break down your muscle mass. So they've usually got skinny little thighs, no bottom, and they hold that weight in that mid-belly section. What is the most abundant protein in skin? Collagen. So stress, cortisol, it's going to break down collagen. That's how it is the biggest contributor to premature aging. So we don't want that. The other thing that cortisol and insulin resistance do, they block the absorption of vitamin C. So it ages you in many different ways. One is that destructive breaking down of your collagen. The other way is you can't get that vitamin C into the cell when you've got high cortisol and insulin resistance. Therefore, that's going to have a big impact on remaking that collagen. Insulin resistance narrows blood vessels. So anyone had diabetic clients, they get all those distal neuropathies. That's because of the insulin narrows blood vessels. So this is where I was talking about, now we've got poor circulation. So one of the things in hormonal imbalances is not having that good circulation. That's how hormones travel. So know that your clients in this are also going to have poor circulation. Blood is the true nourisher of skin. So we want a lot of good blood supply, oxygen, to have a healthy tissue. So in this situation, they don't. And this is where in the beginning I was saying about, think about all of the knock-on effects this is happening. If we go straight in and do a peel or some needling or some RF, when they've got poor circulation, cortisol people are more inflamed, it drives inflammation. They also hold more fluid. So adrenal people, cortisol people, it kicks out the sodium potassium. So that sodium potassium pump doesn't work properly anymore. They hold more fluid. So these are the people, if you don't change this, they're going to swell up. They're going to become more inflamed, and it's going to take ages for it to go down. So you can even just push like on their skin and see, are they quite fluidy? Adrenal people also tend to complain of, like when they hop up, stiff knees and joints, because their muscle mass has gone from their thighs and their bottom, and now it's more wear and tear on their knees. So We know that insulin resistance has a really negative impact. Also, that insulin resistance, excess sugars, these people are going to be more prone to that glycation internally as well as in the skin. So that's why, years ago we seen glycation only in older clients. Now you can see it a lot earlier because insulin resistance is an epidemic in our society. So I think the Australian daily recommended intake of sugar is 6 teaspoons. If they have a Gatorade, that's 14. If you have teriyaki chicken, that's 7. So you can see the blowout in our diet because sugar is hidden in everything. So sugar drives inflammation. So these people, they're more inflamed. It also makes the system more acidic. So these estrogen dominant, low progesterone in skin, you'll be seeing things like polycystic ovaries, endometriosis, passive hyperpigmentation. They're all an estrogen dominant skin condition. That's why I'm saying, like, if you're treating these skin conditions and you're not getting that internal balance, it's going to be so much harder and it'll probably just come back again. That's why that passive hyperpigmentation is so common after pregnancy, because during pregnancy you get a dominance of estrogen. Estrogen competes with progesterone, so after they've had the baby, they're always estrogen dominant with low progesterone. It's also one of the biggest contributors to postnatal depression is the low progesterone. So progesterone is involved in mood. It regulates mood. So if they're feeling, you'll hear people say, oh, around that time of the month, I'm just cranky, I'm horrible to be around, I feel crappy, but they don't understand exactly why that's happening. This is why that's happening. Progesterone, also a good indicator for you to look for in your health assessment questionnaire. Low progesterone, even from an early age, they have menstrual problems. So whether it's long, short, non-existent, painful, any menstrual irregularities is because estrogen is the more dominant hormone with lower progesterone. Progesterone also is like our anti-inflammatory hormone, so that drives that inflammation even further. Progesterone, so good for mood, also good for libido, for energy. So you really want to keep this progesterone balanced with that estrogen. But in our society, it's always doing this cycle. So the thing is that this is the guy we really need to get down, because if we don't lower that and stop and support the adrenals, doesn't matter how much progesterone. Remember I said it's not about giving more of the hormone, because imagine if we put them on a bioidentical progesterone cream, yeah, they'll feel better, but it's still going to get robbed to make that cortisol. So that's why you've got to support the adrenal glands, regulate the cortisol, so then the body can go down the pathway of making sex hormones instead of going down the pathway of making stress hormones.